Hello, good day everyone. In this video lecture, we will be talking about transplantation immunology. There are different accounts of transplantation from the previous centuries or historical um, events wherein some scientists or some physicians will want to heal or treat a sick person by giving them another part of the organ of other individuals. So, in this lecture, we will be talking about the different breakthroughs or events that happened before, wherein scientists, physicians, or other doctors tried to successfully perform transplantation. And transplantation in general somehow needs to counteract the normal function of your immune system. Remember that your immune system needs to work properly, and one of the main functions of the immune system is the ability to recognize one cell or antigen from the self antigens. So recognizing self from non-self is one of the main functions of our immune system. However, when we do transplantation, we want that to be lessened because we don't need our body to attack the transplants or the graft that we are giving. So that is the main point of transplantation immunology. So transplantation is the transfer of living cells, tissues, and organs from one part of the body to another part of the body from one individual or the same individual or from another species. So, transfer lang ng organ tissues or cells. So, yun ang transplant. And sometimes we refer to that as the graft. So, ano ba ang kailangan natin? Bakit ba natin kailangan pa ng mag-transplantation? So, this is pretty self-explanatory. So, pag merong faulty na organ na nag-work sa isang individual, tapos hindi na natin yun kayang i-treat by medicine or surgical procedures, we try to look for another source of function sa anong function ng organ. So, we resort to having transplanted organs or grafts. Pwedeng from same species pero another individual or pwedeng another type of species. Okay? So, we are trying to compensate for what is lacking for that certain individual. Ano ba yung mga accounts wherein people have tried to do transplantation? So, during the 15th century, si Susruta tried to um, do nose reconstruction. So, dito 1912, 15th century. So, sinabi niya that nose reconstruction required collection and transfer of skin from one side to another. So, that is still a type of transplant. Pwedeng skin of that same individual or skin from another individual na closely related on sa patient. So, even though Sushruta is not more of a transplant physician or scientist, he is considered as one of the four founders of cosmetic medicine. Okay, so yun yung sa kanya. Next is what this man did. Sino ba to? Si Alexis Carrel from France. In the 1912, he was able to win the Nobel Prize for Physiology or Medicine because he worked on vascular suture and transplantation of blood vessels and organs. So that is an important way of transplantation. So ano bang example? Ano yung vascular suture and transplantation of blood vessels and organs? Important ba yun? Oo. For example, meron tayong cardiac problem. Yung cardiac problem natin involves that the heart is not receiving enough oxygen kasi yung mga blood vessels that supposedly are supplying the heart muscles are not working. Pwedeng faulty lang or may mga cholesterol na na-block. So, pwede tayong humiram ng blood vessel from another part of our body. For example, yung saphenous vein sa lower extremities, pwede natin yun kunin, tapos i-replace sa um, previous blood vessel na nakalagay doon sa heart. So, that warranted him or granted him the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine during the 1912. So, blood vessels pa lang tayo, hindi pa ganun ka-intense ang problem natin with transplantation immunology. Ngayon, si Peter Brian Medawar, during the 1960s, he said that graft reaction is an immunity phenomenon. So during this time, we have figured out that there are times na because we are trying to transplant larger solid organs, nakakita na kailangan natin i-modify ang immunity of that recipient. So during the 1950s, he somehow induced immunological tolerance to skin allografts in mice by neonatal injection of allogenic cells. So that individual introduced certain allogenic cells so that it will not recognize those cells as foreign. So that somehow make us understand na there should be proper immunologic tolerance so that the graft will survive in the recipient. So that gave him the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in the 1960s. So sino pa ba yung mga important scientists? Si Joseph E. Murray won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for his discoveries in organ transplantation and the treatment of human disease. So the first successful kidney transplant was performed between twins in Boston during the 1954. Now, transplants were now possible in unrelated people if drugs were given to that recipient to suppress the body's immune reaction. Kasi nga, transplantation is an immunity phenomenon, yung graft reaction. So that was the ability for us to tolerate unrelated people's organs was started during this time. And previously, meron ding nakadiscover that there are some genetically determined structures on the cell surface that regulate immunological reactions. Diba? Na-mention natin before that there are what we call major histocompatibility complex. And they display peptides so that our antigen-specific cells will recognize those fragments of protein antigen. So, yun ang trabaho ni MHC. Tapos, yung MHC molecules in humans, yung molecules mismo, are called human leukocyte antigens because they were thought to be detected on leukocytes by binding of the antibodies. Ngayon, the genes encoding those HLA molecules are now learned that are clustered on the small segment of, ano nga yung sabi natin about MHC, yung HLA? Tama. They are clustered on the segment of chromosome 6. Okay, galing. Ganyan. Tama yan. So, yung HLA system is highly polymorphic. So, ano ibig sabihin nun? It means that there are many alleles on the MHC genes. Pag maraming alleles, ibig sabihin, there are thousands of combinations in humans and each individual's alleles are different from those inherited from other individuals, even in the same population. So, yung HLA alleles nila are totally different from each other, especially they are not related. And because of that, this constitutes the barrier in organ transplantation, which we are trying to modify because hindi magsa-survive yung graft if papabayaan natin yun na molecules. Okay? So we again define transplantation. Transplantation is the implantation of non-self tissue in the body unless it is an autograft. Okay? Unless it is an autograft. Now, the process of taking cells, tissues, or organs from one part or individual and placing them into another is the main mechanism of transplantation. So, yung donor, syempre, or yung giver, siya nagbibigay ng graft. Yung recipient, siya yung nag-receive ng graft. So, transplantations or transplants exchange between animals of the same and other inbred strains showed that these grafts among members of inbred strain are accepted and those grafts from different strains are rejected. Kasi nga, mabilis mag-recognize ng non-self ang ating immune system. So because of the ability to understand the genes that are being expressed in tissues, nagkaroon tayo nung entire discipline of transplantation immunology. So let us classify muna the understanding. Ano ba yung different types of um, grafts or transplants based on genetics? So pagka same individual or yung graft kinuha doon sa same person, self to self, so autograft yun. When one individual to another, pero similar genetically, so ang tawag natin doon isograft. So kailan ba yung nangyayari? Pag meron tayong identical twins. Or pag naman grafts between two genetically non-identical members of the same species, yun yung tawag natin na allograft. So dito nagkakaroon ng major graft rejections. So, meron pa tayong isang tinatawag na synogenic. So, ito yung one species to another. So, ang example, pigs to humans. So, pigs to humans, possible ba yun? Before, we did not think it was possible, but somehow, some part of the pig's organs survived the human immune system. So, ano example? Mga valves or cardiac valves being transplanted to humans. So, ganun. Another terminology. So, meron tayong tinatawag na static or structural grafts. For example, yung mga non-living like bones and arteries, and yung mga live grafts of solid organs, yung mga kidneys, heart, and also referred to as the vital grafts. So, ang types of transplantation ulit, autologous graft, syngeneic graft, allogenic graft, and xenogenic graft. So, you can figure out the meaning of those because of their prefixes. Okay? So, methods of transplantation, pwedeng same organism, autografting, example, yung mga blood vessels, or different organisms, allografting. So, yung allografting and xenografting, doon yun pumapasok yung graft rejection as mediated by the adaptive immune system because it shows specificity and memory and is dependent on lymphocytes. Di ba sabi natin, the graft immunology is dependent on the major histocompatibility complex and ang trabaho ng ating MHC molecules is to display peptide fragments on protein antigens for recognitions by sinong nagre-recognize dapat? Mga antigen-specific T cells. So, it is somehow cell-mediated. So, ulitin natin, allograft transplant, transplant from one individual to another with a different genetic makeup. Same species. Example, kidney transplant, pwedeng identical twin or another. So that is your allograft. Pwede ring parts of the joints. And pag isograft naman, specific yan for genetically identical monozygotic twins or members of an inbred strain of animals. Isograft. Autograft, same person receives organs from different parts of their body. For example, skin grafting or mga skin sa may gluteal area, ididikit sa some parts of the body to cover for um, injuries like burns, ganon. Xenograft, transplant across species barrier. So that xenograft has a very poor prognosis because cross-reactive, cross-species reactive antibodies will induce a certain type of rejection. But we will talk about that in other portions of this video. Okay, so this is an example of the xenograft. Yung ating pig liver cells or cardiac valves i-transplant sa atin. So, that has been so far successful for some individuals. But it requires certain immune suppression to happen. So, ganun ang ating different types of grafts or transplantation. So, the difficulty enters the non-identical type of grafts. Okay?